So this morning we will be talking about shepherds. The Bible talks a lot about shepherds all over the place. Long before Jesus called himself the Good Shepherd, there was talk of shepherds, right? King David, one of the greatest kings that ever ruled over Israel, was a shepherd before he became a king. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 11, it says, "So he asked Jesse, 'Are these all the sons you have?' 'There is still the youngest,' Jesse answered. 'He's tending the sheep.' Samuel said, 'Send for him, and we will not sit down until he arrives.'" This is where God sends Samuel to pick David as the new king. And God says, you might look at all these guys that you're going to be looking at and look at this big, manly man and decide that guy's the king. But I don't look at what's on the outside. I look at what's on the inside. I don't care what they look like on the outside. I look on the inside. So God says, I will tell you who to choose. And the youngest shepherd in the family is the one who God chooses to be the king over Israel. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 34 through 36 says, "But David said to Saul, 'Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it. I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God.'" This is a pretty impressive situation, right? A kid goes up to the king of Israel and says, "Look, I've been tending sheep for a long time. I can take down this giant, not a problem." When the whole army of Israel was shaken in their armor, this guy said, "Look, I fought lions, I fought bears. This is what I do. He won't be a problem. I can take care of him." The greatest earthly shepherd, King David, that ever lived, also wrote probably the greatest psalm. Even people who are not Christians know this psalm. And he talks about how God is his shepherd. In Psalm 23, verse 1 through 4, it says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters and refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. You are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." We're going to kind of circle back around to Psalm 23 closer to the end, so I won't be talking much about that right at this moment. But shepherding in the Bible and during that time was a very important part of the culture and the way of life back then. Everybody knew what a shepherd was and what they did, and they had a very big job to do. Though the actual shepherds themselves, they believed, were not to be trusted, the job that they did, the sheep that they took care of were very, very valuable and very important. The amount of sheep you had was how wealthy you were, right? And one of the greatest sacrifices you could give was an unblemished lamb. That's why Jesus is called the Lamb of God. So these shepherds were watching after a very, very valuable commodity at that time. And today we're going to be talking about how Jesus compares himself to a shepherd by calling himself the Good Shepherd. Starting in John chapter 10, verses 1 through 6, it says, "Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep's pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice." Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. So Jesus starts off this what we see as a parable, telling them that the sheep are protected by this gate. They can't get out And if anybody comes in who is not the shepherd, it's going to be somebody who's coming in to do something wrong. It's going to be somebody who's coming in to steal sheep or hurt somebody or do something. The sheep won't follow those people. So if I walk up to a sheep pen and I try to call these sheep, they're not going to listen to me. But if their shepherd walks up right behind me and calls them, they'll come running out because they know the voice of the shepherd. Sheep spend so much time, or shepherds spend so much time with their sheep, they get to know their shepherd. And that's what Jesus is saying in comparing himself to the shepherd. As we as sheep need to spend so much time with him, we will start to recognize him in our daily lives. We'll start to see the situations where the devil's coming after us and stay away from him, right? The devil can entice us with these amazing things that we might like, or they might make us feel good for a moment, but we'll begin to recognize that's a strange voice to me. You know, what we might have enjoyed doing when we were away from God, we'll look at it now going, that's a stranger's voice. This is my shepherd. This is the one I'm going to follow. In John chapter 10, verses 7 through 10, it says, "Therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." So, just to clarify things, the book of John does not have any parables in it. It's the only one of the Gospels that does not have what we know as a parable. But it is the only book that has the famous I am statements, the statements where Jesus says, I am. And these, John even says, are really, really confusing to people. So that's why we connect them with parables, because when Jesus says, I am, he's comparing himself to something worldly, and we have to kind of discern it. So it's not really considered a parable in the sense of like the prodigal son or the other parables we're going to go through. It's more considered of Jesus comparing himself to something. And these I am statements are in our parables because they are so confusing, and people can go, wait a minute, you're a shepherd, you're a gate? Wait a minute, what are you? You know, and even the Pharisees, it says the Pharisees were confused. And he was talking to his disciples and the Pharisees, so I'm sure his disciples were like, okay, we're missing something here. I need you to slow down, speak a little more clearly, because I'm not getting what you're saying. But in this statement in these verses is Jesus' third I am statement. He says, I am the gate for the sheep. So, true story, there was a man, he was a commentator of the Bible. He was a theologian, and he was visiting the Middle East to talk to them about the area. He wanted to get an idea of what the area was like. So he was traveling around the Middle East, studying what it was like. And one day he came across a shepherd who was not a Christian, knew nothing about the Bible, but his job was to tend and take care of sheep. And he was so proud of his job, and he loved his job so much, and he wanted to tell this guy everything that he did. And he showed them where they stayed and everything he did. And then he showed them the pen that they slept in. He said, when they go in there, they're all perfectly safe. They're perfectly safe when I put them inside this pen. But then the guy was looking at the pen, and he realized that the sheep sleep in there, but there was no gate. It was just an open way to get out. There was nothing stopping them from getting in and out. And he looked at him, he said, how can they be safe in there if there's no gate, right? How can they be safe if there's no gate? And the shepherd said, I am the gate. And what he meant by that was, he said, after my sheep are in this pen, I lay my body across the opening. No sheep will walk across me to get out, and a wolf has to come over me to get in. So Jesus is saying, I am the gate. You don't need a normal gate to keep you out of the world that the devil is trying to suck you into, because I'm going to protect you. You won't need to cross through me to get out there, and the devil's going to have to come through me to get to you. So I'm the one keeping you safe. You will be saved when you come through that gate. You will be protected. So this shepherd was actually, even though he didn't know the Bible, said the same thing Jesus did. I am the gate for the sheep. They won't leave if I'm here, and the wolves can't come in. In verses 1 through 10, Jesus mentions Satan 3 times. Twice he says thief and robber, or thieves and robbers, and once he says thief. So why would he compare or use the word, both of the words, thief and robber? Because to us they mean the same thing, right? Somebody who took something. So why would he use both words? We think they mean the exact same thing, but the words that Jesus used didn't mean the same thing. So the word thief actually meant, when he said it, it meant somebody who would take something undercover, right? Somebody who would take something without anybody knowing about it. The word he used for robber was somebody who had no problem just taking everything from you out in the open of everybody, right? He wasn't hiding the fact that he was stealing. So if we look at it in our sense, if I were to go into a store and see something I really like and look around, make sure nobody's looking, and take it and put it in my pocket, I would be a thief. If I were to walk into that store with a gun and say, all right, everybody get down, give me all your money, I'd be a robber, right? I was doing it out in the open in front of everybody, and I just didn't care. So Jesus was trying to say, you know what? The devil will sneak in and steal you, and he will try to hurt you, and nobody's going to know what's going on in your life when he's in there digging around trying to destroy you. And then he also said he's going to come in guns a-blazing, and he doesn't care who sees him. He's going to come after you. So he says that only the thief and the robber are going to come in through the side, but they're not going to get through the gate. Why? Because I am the gate, and he has to go through me. We have to understand that the devil is very persistent. So if we look at our lives as Christians, as sheep in a pen, the devil is constantly circling that pen, trying to figure out a way to get in. And when he gets in, he's going to try to figure out a way to pull out as many people as he can, right? And we're not going to lose our salvation, but the devil's goal in the end, if he's going to be cast into the lake of fire, he wants to take as many of God's creation with him as he possibly can. So he's going to come after everybody that he possibly can. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, it says, the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. The God of this age, the devil, the God of this world, right? The Bible also calls him the prince of the power of the air. So he's everywhere. Even in the book of Job, in the beginning, when Satan shows up and God says, where have you been? He's, I've just been cruising around your creation, checking everybody out, looking at everything. So he's always out there, always roaming around, right? And in Jesus's first statement, he says, I come in and I take my flock, I take mine, which would imply that there would be more, right? The real world of it is in this world, the devil has his flock and Jesus has his. And no matter what we think of ourselves, how great we are or wonderful, without Jesus Christ, we are in the devil's flock. No matter what we think, we are in his flock. And the devil's going to try to take and keep as many as he can. And he's going to try to keep Jesus from getting to as many of his flock as he possibly can. That's why it says he has blinded the unbelievers to the gospel who cannot see the light of Jesus Christ. In James chapter 4, verse 4, it says, you adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anybody who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. With the devil being the ruler of this world, being friends with the world puts us in whose flock, right? It puts us in the devil's flock. We don't want to be friends with the world. Sadly, we have to live in this world. We have to be surrounded by what the devil's got going on. But we need to keep our focus on Christ. We need to stay in that flock. Sheep have a tendency of roaming away, and so do we as human beings. It's just part and parcel of the human experience. But we always need to keep turning ourselves back to Christ. In John chapter 10, verses 11 through 18, it says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice. And there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up. This command I receive from my Father. So Jesus says, I am the one who takes care of all of you. I am the one who will give my life for you. And it's not just a whole massive group of people that he's saying this to. He's saying this to each and every one of us individually. I will lay my life down for you. I will take care of you. If the devil is going to get to you, he's going to have to come through me first to get to you. So why does the Bible call us sheep? Why are we compared to sheep when it comes to Jesus talking about this, or they're constantly talking about Jesus being the shepherd and we are the sheep? Why is that? Well, the reality of it is, like sheep, we are not very smart. And I guess you could say we're probably challenged, right? We have our issues that we have to deal with that pull us away from God. Here's a true story, another one that's an interesting story. It tells a lot about human nature when you listen to it, how we have a tendency just to follow the crowd, right? About 1,500 sheep one time were left unattended. They all got scared and they took off running. And they all ran off a cliff, right? 400 of those sheep died, but 1,100 of them were saved. And they weren't saved because a guy on a horse showed up and stopped them, or a sheepdog showed up and stopped them. They were saved because the 400 who hit the ground first made a nice cushion to land on, and they didn't die when they hit the ground. 1,500 sheep. Imagine being the one in the back watching all your friends just disappear over a cliff and think to yourself, well, might as well. Everybody else did it, right? And as human beings, we have a tendency to follow the crowd, right? We follow the people who yell the loudest, or we're afraid of the people who yell the loudest. And many times Christians have a tendency to lean that way too. They don't want to go against the flow by preaching Christ, so they just kind of blend into the crowd. The sad reality of it is we could end up falling off of a cliff when we follow the crowd. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 6 says, we all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That verse is saying all of us are like sheep who have just kind of gone our own way, just took off grazing, doing whatever we want. We're out in the world, the devil's coming after us. But God sent somebody to lay down for the iniquities of us all, to take care of all of the things that we've done wrong, to round us back up and make us part of the family again. The interesting thing about sheep is the real world of it is sheep can really recognize the voice of their shepherd. They really can discern between the voices of different people. And they will absolutely run from strangers. So if you see sheep out in a field and you go up to pet them, they're going to know that you don't belong there and they're going to run. And let's hope there's not a cliff nearby because they may just run right off the cliff, right? The sheep are very smart in that sense, and we should be smart in that sense when we realize the reality of our need for a Savior, and that's the voice we listen to, right? That's the voice that we hear. Sheep are emotional, just like we are. They have the ability to build friendships. They can get anxious. They can get distressed. They can feel sadness. Just like sheep, we get anxious, we get distressed, we feel sadness. And it's very important that we listen to Jesus. We dig into his word. We pay attention to what he has to say about our lives because he is our shepherd who will keep us calm in times of trouble. Sheep have never been used as pack animals. They've never been used to carry heavy loads. You don't ever see anybody trudging up a mountain with a bunch of sheep with packs on carrying stuff. That's because sheep weren't designed to carry heavy burdens. Human beings were also not designed to carry heavy burdens. And as we go through our lives and we're carrying this garbage of life, you all know it. You see people just start slowing down. They're getting depressed. They're unhappy. They don't know what to do. They seem lost. They get testy. They get angry, right? And it's all because they're carrying something they have no earthly business carrying. They can't get rid of it. They can't give it to God and let go of it. They're just letting it weigh them down. Just like sheep are not meant to carry burdens, neither are we. Psalm 55, verse 22 says, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." All of your cares, give them to God. That is probably the most difficult command in the Bible for me to follow. You know, it's the most difficult thing for me to do when I get frustrated over something, when I get worried, when I get upset. It is so hard for me to go, all right, God, it's yours. I'm not going to think about it anymore because my mind does not shut off. I'm an overthinker. And something happens, and next thing you know, it's a catastrophic nuclear war before I can let it go, right? I just can't get rid of that stuff that's weighing me down. And it's a very difficult thing, and it's something I have to learn to do. Okay, I'm frustrated. God, you got to take this because I can't get rid of it. I can't keep carrying this around with me because it's weighing me down so much. I don't know how to live the rest of my life. It's affecting everybody around me. It's affecting my work. It's affecting my wife. If I had kids, it'd affect my kids, right? This burden that we carry can affect everybody around us. Now, sheep are just like humans in the sense that they will settle for whatever's in front of them. When sheep are thirsty, if they're walking somewhere and there's a nice, beautiful lake in front of them and they come up to a dirty mud puddle, they'll stop and drink out of that mud puddle, even though the lake is 20 feet away, because they just will settle for whatever is in front of them, whatever will take care of their need at that moment. They'll say, I'm thirsty, so I'm going to drink here. I'm not going to keep going to that beautiful lake, right? I'm just going to settle for what's right in front of me. And human beings have a tendency to do that when something is far off in the future, or we have to wait for it, or we have to work for it. But this right here is easy. I'm just going to go for this because this is the easy thing. Sadly, when it comes to things like that, human beings are content, like sheep, being in filth, as long as it satisfies us for the moment, right? Sheep will stink and never even know that they stink. Human beings can be the same way. I don't know if you have met people who are just rude and angry and bitter, and they just don't even realize it, right? They just keep on living their lives and don't even realize what kind of person they are. But when you talk to them, you're like, man, you're not a really nice person, right? You're bitter, you're angry, but it's just who they are. And we have a tendency of getting these attitudes and ways of being and just holding on to them when this is just who we are in our lives. Just like sheep, they stink and they don't even know it. We don't even realize who we are or who we have become because we're just so used to living that way. The lack of discernment and judgment gives them the inability to know what's good for them. And we are like that too. We don't know really what's good for us. We know what we want, we know what we like, we know what feels good, and we have a tendency just to jump on those things because they're nice or they're wonderful or they make us feel good for the moment. But in the long run, it can cause us pain and agony and misery because we just needed to feel good right then, right? We needed to have a good time then. We needed to smile then. So we go after what's right in front of us instead of waiting. A lot of people say, I don't want to go to heaven because there's no fun in heaven. I want to have fun here as much as I possibly can. And I'll go to hell. I'm good with that because all I care about is having fun and feeling good. And nobody thinks about the long run. What comes after this, right? What comes after our life here on earth? Does anybody ever think of, I'm coming down to the end of my age, right? I'm coming down to that time. What's going to happen at the end? What's really going to happen? Is my life of making myself feel good and only myself feel good, is that what is going to carry me through into eternity? Or is living my life for Christ, at least the best I can, what is going to carry me through to eternity? We have to remember we can't always act on what we think is good for us, right? We need to stay in God's word. We need to listen to our good shepherd's voice when he says, that's a bad idea, right? Don't do that. We need to pay attention to what Jesus is saying. How many of us have settled for less and not realized there was something great just beyond the horizon or just 10 feet away? We've settled for less than what we could have had. How many of us are content with filth and don't realize that we stink, right? How many of us are content in our bitterness, in our frustrations, in our angers, and we don't realize how it affects the world around us? I mean, I don't know if you've ever been around any sheep, but I can't stand being around them very long. They stink, right? And if you're around somebody who stinks, and in the sense of a bad attitude or is an angry person or has nothing nice to say, you don't want to be around them for very long. And sadly, those people just don't realize that's who they are, because as human beings, that's who we are, right? We just don't get, you know what, maybe there needs to be a change. Maybe I do stink. This is why we need a shepherd. Somebody who will take care of us. Somebody who will make sure we're going in the right direction. Someone who will feed us. Somebody who will water us. Somebody who will be there for us. Somebody who will lead us to better things and clean us up when nobody else will touch us. Psalm 23 verses 1-4 says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters and refreshes my soul. He guides me along right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." The interesting thing about these verses is he says, he makes me to lie down in green pastures. He makes us. He doesn't say, I'll give you the opportunity to lay down wherever you want. He says, this is where you need to be. He leads us to that calming, still water. Why? Because we would drink out of a dirty mud puddle. He leads us in the right direction. It says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Why? Because he uses them to fend off the wolves, right? But another thing about those tools is he uses them to correct us. Shepherds use their staffs every once in a while to knock a sheep on the head to get them right, going in the right direction. And I don't know about any of you, but I'm pretty sure God has hit me a couple of times. Believe it or not, sheep were considered very valuable in God's eyes, in the people's eyes. And in God's eyes, you are very valuable. You are one of his sheep. No matter how much dirty water you drank, no matter how much you stunk, he's cleaned you up, made you white as snow, and brought you into his flock. And he will guard you and protect you every step of the way, even when you're trying to do things that satisfy your flesh, not your spiritual appetite. You're trying to satisfy your physical appetite. Just like sheep, we tend to have no direction. But with Jesus Christ as our shepherd, he will lead us. He will guide us. He will take us where we need to go. And when we lack protection on every side, we will be attacked by the devil. But Jesus Christ surrounds us. Like your song, this is how I fight my battles. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by God, right? I'm really surrounded and protected by God. And Jesus is the gate that will stop the devil from coming in. Our shepherd cares for us, not just today, not just tomorrow, but for all eternity. Romans chapter 7, verse 17 says, for the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will lead them to springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes.